Sir Keir Starmer is facing what many are calling the most perilous political storm of his career, just hours after unveiling what his inner circle described as a historic reset in the United Kingdom's relationship with the European Union. What was intended to mark a new diplomatic chapter has instead triggered chaos at Westminster, igniting a cross-party revolt and fueling speculation that Starmer's leadership may not survive the week. Rather than the applause his team anticipated, the Labour leader is now the target of withering criticism from all sides of the political spectrum. Both Conservative and Labour backbenchers are coalescing around a motion of no confidence, amid growing alarm that Starmer is attempting to unravel key pillars of the Brexit settlement. What was once considered steady leadership is now being portrayed as a brazen act of betrayal. This is not mere political turbulence, it is a full-scale rebellion. For years, Starmer assured the public that he would respect and uphold the outcome of the 2016 referendum. However, critics say he has now performed a dramatic volte-face, engaging in what they describe as a systematic and calculated effort to draw Britain back into the EU's orbit, incrementally, through backdoor policy alignments, regulatory harmonization, and strategic concessions on sovereignty. The breaking point came with the quiet, almost clandestine, signing of a new fisheries agreement that extends European access to British waters until the year 2038. This effectively grants EU fishing vessels a further 12 years of exploitation rights in UK seas, rights that many coastal communities believed had been permanently reclaimed through Brexit. British fishermen, once promised rejuvenation and control over domestic waters, now feel abandoned. The Scottish Fishermen's Federation issued a scathing statement, condemning the deal as a horror show that sacrifices national interest for continental appeasement. The reaction in Parliament has been swift and severe. Angered MPs from across the political divide are calling out what they see as a capitulation masquerading as diplomacy. This isn't a reset, it's a retreat, one backbench Conservative MP declared in a heated Commons session. A Labour MP, speaking on condition of anonymity, was even more direct. Starmer is dragging our party, and the entire country, into a Brexit betrayal we may never recover from. But the fisheries agreement is only one part of what is rapidly becoming a much larger political firestorm. Starmer has also approved a youth mobility scheme with the European Union, which critics say is tantamount to reintroducing free movement by another name. Under this new arrangement, EU citizens aged 18 to 30 will be allowed to live and work in the United Kingdom for up to 3 years, without any fixed national quota, stringent vetting mechanisms, or robust parliamentary oversight. To many, this development signals a direct abandonment of one of Brexit's central tenets, the restoration of immigration control. What was the point of leaving? One voter in Boston reportedly asked, if we're just going to throw open the doors again without a fight. The sense of déjà vu is palpable among those who backed Brexit in hopes of regaining national self-determination. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage has seized the moment to launch a relentless media blitz. With his characteristic flair for populist outrage, he has dubbed Starmer, Reform UK's Employee of the Month, accusing him of colluding with Brussels to undo the democratic will of the British people. Farage has taken to the airwaves, social media, and town halls to dissect every clause of Starmer's new deals, pointing to what he calls a trail of broken promises and constitutional cowardice. Indeed, what was meant to be a strategic diplomatic shift is now widely regarded as a dramatic reversal of Brexit itself. Starmer, critics say, has revealed himself as the Europhile many long suspected he was, more attuned to the demands of EU technocrats than to the voices of the British electorate. His vision of Britain's future, they argue, is one of slow reintegration into the European fold, cloaked in ambiguous language and technocratic nuance. The backlash has been brutal and unrelenting. Senior Conservative MPs have denounced the deal as the most grievous betrayal of British industry since Brexit, branding it a national humiliation. Even Boris Johnson, who had largely retreated from the political spotlight, emerged to slam the Labour leader's decision-making. In a rare public statement, the former Prime Minister accused Starmer of dragging the nation back into Brussels' sweaty embrace, and warned that the UK is heading towards a return to low growth, suffocating regulations, and diminished sovereignty. Johnson's concerns echo deeper unease about the fine print of the new agreements. The deals reportedly realign the UK with EU food and animal welfare regulations, reintroduce limited jurisdiction for the European Court of Justice, and establish frameworks for joint defence cooperation, raising fears that Britain is inching towards entanglement in a future European army, despite years of assurances to the contrary. This isn't a reset, it's a rewriting of the Brexit story, one political commentator observed, and not with Britain at the centre of the narrative, but back in the margins. The political fallout has been immediate and severe. Starmer is now staring down the barrel of a full-blown leadership crisis. The halls of Westminster are reverberating with unrest, as whispers of internal rebellion swell into full-throated demands for a vote of no confidence. MPs from within his own party, fearful of catastrophic electoral consequences, beginning to turn against him. Reports from inside Labour's internal meetings paint a picture of a leader under siege. Starmer, according to sources, lashed out at dissenting colleagues behind closed doors, accusing them of treachery and threatening deselection. But the damage may already be irreversible. He had hoped that the timing of the announcement, coinciding with the bank holiday season and a relatively quiet news cycle, would allow the deals to pass with minimal public scrutiny. That hope has proven to be spectacularly misplaced. As Starmer now finds himself increasingly cornered, surrounded by furious MPs, a disillusioned public, and a revitalized opposition led by Farage, questions are no longer focused on whether he will survive, but how much political wreckage he will leave in his wake. To make matters more extraordinary, a dramatic new development is now unfolding. In a move without precedent in recent British political history, King Charles III has reportedly intervened to express concern over Labour's broader legislative agenda, specifically regarding its perceived encroachment on free speech. Though details remain limited, sources close to the palace suggest the king has privately communicated his unease about the tone and direction of Labour's proposed reforms to public discourse laws. It is a rare, if not historic, moment of royal unease, and one that underscores just how destabilizing Starmer's recent actions have become for the nation's political establishment. In an extraordinary turn of events that has sent shockwaves through Britain's political establishment, sources close to Buckingham Palace claim that King Charles III has privately intervened in the government's controversial crackdown on free speech. The monarch, it is alleged, has taken particular issue with the treatment of Tommy Robinson, the outspoken working-class activist and journalist, who was recently handed a 10-year prison sentence under laws connected to the Online Safety Act, a sentence that, notably, has now been discreetly reduced following the King's reported involvement. The alleged royal intervention marks a historic constitutional moment. Palace insiders suggest that the King, increasingly alarmed by what he perceives as a dangerous erosion of civil liberties, issued a blunt message to Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer and his cabinet: "You do not jail people for their opinions in Britain, not on my watch." It is a rare and powerful rebuke from the traditionally apolitical monarchy, and one that has thrown the government's authoritarian tendencies into sharp relief. Over the past month, the public has watched with growing disbelief as Starmer's administration appeared to weaponize the Online Safety Act, a law originally presented as a shield against online abuse and harmful content. Instead, critics argue it has become a tool to punish citizens for expressing politically unpopular views on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, not for inciting violence, but for voicing opinions. The Robinson case has become the most visible symbol of this growing unease. Hated by much of the liberal elite for his anti-immigration stance and for exposing grooming gangs, Robinson has long been a thorn in the side of Labour orthodoxy. His recent imprisonment without bail or parole raised alarm among civil liberties groups and provoked a wave of public outrage. Yet no major media outlet covered the quiet reduction of his sentence, no explanation was given, and yet everyone knows why. The monarchy had drawn a line in the sand, and Keir Starmer had been forced to retreat. This rare constitutional check on executive power has humiliated the Labour leader. Once seen as a steely, technocratic enforcer, Starmer now finds himself the target of unprecedented criticism for what many see as a creeping authoritarianism under his watch. Consider the case of Lucy Connelly, a mother who was jailed for a tweet posted during a riot 4 years ago. Her alleged crime? Writing, "Set fire to all the hotels for all I care," in a moment of emotional distress after hearing reports of children murdered in Southport. She later deleted the tweet and issued a public apology, yet Labour's law enforcement officers nonetheless arrested her in her home, interrogated her, and secured a 31-month prison sentence. Her case, now widely shared online, has become emblematic of the dystopian nature of Starmer's Britain, a place where intent is ignored, context is discarded, and words are treated as violence. And still, the national press is largely silent. Where are the outcries from the so-called defenders of liberty, fairness, and justice? Why are progressive commentators, usually so quick to condemn human rights abuses, standing idly by? For many, the answer is painfully clear. In Starmer's Britain, free speech is permitted only when it aligns with approved narratives. All else is swiftly labelled as hate speech, regardless of context or nuance. The double standards are staggering. While working-class Britons like Connelly are dragged through the courts for emotional outbursts online, radical extremists can be seen openly chanting for violence on Britain's streets, with impunity. Jews and Christians face growing threats, yet little is done, while ordinary people are silenced for daring to express frustration or patriotism. And now, finally, the king has said, enough. According to senior palace aides, the monarch has requested a comprehensive review of recent arrests linked to so-called speech offences. This includes not only high-profile figures like Robinson and Connelly but also dozens of others, ordinary men and women, factory workers, carers, teachers, who now face criminal records for Facebook posts, TikTok rants, or even off-color jokes made in poor taste but without malice. It is a remarkable moment for a monarchy often dismissed as ceremonial. The idea that King Charles III, long considered a cautious and contemplative figure, would take such a decisive stand against the government's overreach has emboldened many. For the first time in decades, the Crown has publicly reasserted its role as a safeguard for the liberties of the British people, liberties that were once the envy of the world. This is not a mere legal skirmish. This is, at its core, a clash of political power and national identity. Starmer's government is accused of attempting to normalize censorship, to instill fear, and to create a population too afraid to speak freely. It is a model of governance based on intimidation. Speak out, and you could be next. But that chilling strategy may now be collapsing. King Charles's intervention has shifted the national conversation. Behind closed doors, senior Labour figures are said to be in panic mode, with internal memos warning of catastrophic political fallout. They know the optics are devastating. They know the electorate is paying attention. They know that public anger is growing. People across Britain can see what's happening. They see radical Islamists call for holy war in central London with barely a police warning, while Tommy Robinson sits in a cell. They see a mother like Lucy Connelly imprisoned over a long-deleted tweet, while gang leaders and serial offenders are released early in the name of rehabilitation and equity. Now, buoyed by the King's decisive intervention, the public is waking up. One institution in Britain, it turns out, still remembers who it exists to serve. One voice, above the political fray, has chosen to act, not for partisan gain, but in defense of the basic freedoms that define our democracy. A constitutional confrontation may now be brewing. On one side, an increasingly embattled Labour elite, unaccountable and unelected, determined to reshape Britain in their image. On the other, a monarch who has rediscovered a quiet sense of purpose, and a nation of citizens no longer willing to be cowed into silence. Sir Keir Starmer believed he could quietly remake the country into a surveillance society governed by acceptable speech and technocratic oversight. What he did not anticipate was a monarch calmly but firmly saying, "No more." The consequences are already unfolding. Let us not forget how deliberate Labour's strategy has been. For years, party loyalists in media, academia, and civil service have championed the idea that words are violence, that disagreement is dangerous, that figures like Robinson and Connelly are not political dissidents but threats to public safety. This narrative is now crumbling. The illusion of moral superiority is disintegrating. The public is seeing through the spin. And Labour? They've run out of room to maneuver. Starmer is staring into a political abyss. What began as a stealth campaign to criminalize dissent has spiraled into a national scandal, threatening to undo the very foundations of his leadership. The chant is growing louder, "Free Lucy. Justice for Tommy." It's echoing from Plymouth to Preston, from Burnley to Birmingham. The question now facing the Labour leader is not whether his government will survive, but how many more of the British people he will lose before it falls. Because when fear stops working, freedom begins.